I'm a 14-year-old girl, and like most adolescents, I enjoy being home alone. My dad usually works from home, so this is a rare occurrence. However, when the opportunity arises, I seize it. One day, both my parents decided to take my brother to a chess class and then go shopping in a nearby strip mall. They asked if I wanted to come along, but tempted by the chance to indulge in Halloween candy and watch Dexter at full volume, I chose to stay home. They tried to convince me otherwise, but my aversion to going outside won, and they left. A few minutes later, I settled in for a few hours of peace with a mountain of Twix and Kit Kats and the brilliance of Michael S.E. Hall. I don't know what magic those candy manufacturers infuse into their products, but I'm not complaining. After a few episodes, the candy disappeared, leaving only shiny wrappers that I would probably trade my soul for. I went to dispose of them and mourn the loss of the glorious chocolatey caramel cookie, that is Twix, when I noticed the trash can was nearly overflowing. It was around 6:30, dark enough to feel like the middle of the night. I hesitated to go outside, especially considering the house next door had been vacant for the past 2 years, making it a bit eerie. The garbage bin was right next to the garage door, and I could get in and out in about 5 seconds, so I decided to take the risk. I went outside, threw the trash away, and as I turned to go back in, I saw a man walking by. It wasn't entirely unusual, given that I live on a busy street in an upper-middle-class area with little crime. However, it was a bit odd that he was dressed entirely in black. Most people prefer to be visible at night to avoid accidents. Still, it didn't strike me as too strange. He was on his phone and didn't even glance up at me, which I appreciated, considering I was in a nightgown with messy hair. I rushed back inside, closed the garage door, and as it was slowly descending, the man hurried inside. I was in shock, staring at him. We made eye contact, but he appeared perfectly normal, not displaying any signs of madness. The garage door shut and he grinned widely. I screamed, slammed the door leading to the garage, and locked it. He began yelling about wanting to be friends. Panicking, I called my parents, though they didn't answer. I should have called the police immediately, but the fear of them coming home to a strange man attacking them held me back. Frantically, I texted them and then called 911, who assured me they would dispatch a squad car. The next 10 minutes were probably the most terrifying of my life. The operator stayed on the line, advising me not to go outside in case the man had accomplices. I could hear him in the garage, not attempting to break down the door but scratching it, jiggling the doorknob and calling for me to open it. It was more unnerving than if he had tried to force his way in. Finally, the police arrived. The man was outside, sitting in front of the garage of the empty house next door. He claimed to be a landscaper, wanting to talk with me, insisting we had spoken before and were friends. At this point, I was hysterical, unable to form coherent sentences. The police arrested him. My parents came home ensuring I was okay. Strangely, they seemed more concerned about the car in the garage than my well-being. I can't blame them. That car is older than I am and holds sentimental value. I've decided never to go out at night again and probably won't be opening a garage door anytime soon. In December of 2011, during my college semester break, I grew up in rural Texas, a town of about 1,000 people. After my parents' divorce, I moved to a large city for college. However, it became a tradition to visit my family in the Texan countryside every year for the holidays. Following the divorce, my mom had recently moved to a nearby town of around 100 people, where her house was located on the outskirts, surrounded by miles of cornfields in almost every direction. The house was quite secluded, with only one neighbor about half a mile north, a truck driver rarely at home. The only thing close to civilization was about 15 miles away. This particular winter break was different. My mom and brother, who lived in the same city as me, were traveling to Boston to visit grandparents. My mom needed someone to dog sit, so after a few days of having the house to myself, I decided to take a walk around the area with my dog. As we walked along the dead-end road and turned back as it got darker, a cold front was approaching. Frustrated with the cold and drizzle, I started walking faster, almost jogging back to the house. My dog suddenly stopped abruptly and began barking towards the cornfields. Thinking he was just being stubborn, I didn't let him go far. However, in front of the fields, he continued barking as if he saw someone. I picked him up and we ran back home, both damp and cold. After drying up and taking a bath, evening came. My dog and I watched TV in the living room and called it a night by 10 p.m. Though it was still windy, it never stormed. It only rained a bit. In the bedroom, my dog burrowed under the blankets, and I fell asleep. Hours later, my dog woke me up, growling towards the window. Hearing rustling outside, I thought it was animals, but drowsy, I picked up my dog and moved to the living room couch, turning up with the TV to drown out the noise. At 1:30 a.m., a knock on the back door startled us. My dog went wild, and I caught him just before he dashed towards the door. I don't remember exactly what happened next, but somehow my dog calmed down. Later I heard no more rustling and my dog was silent, ready to burrow again. 30 minutes later, another knock, this time on the front door. Terrified, I grabbed the landline and dialed 911. My dog was now at the door, barking furiously. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher until the police were on their way. Looking out the side window, I saw a man standing in front of the door, staring blankly. I grabbed mace, shouted that the police were coming, but he remained motionless. After about 20 minutes, he walked away. When the cops arrived, I described everything, feeling terrified. They explained the man had schizophrenia and late-stage Alzheimer's, sometimes wandering around homes. They found and took him back to his caretakers. The police asked if I had somewhere else to go, so I packed up and stayed at my father's house for the remainder of the ordeal. It took place when I was around 8 years old, and my sister was either 12 or 13. We lived in a small house we called the Shack, where our mom moved us after splitting up with our father. It was all we could afford, and my sister and I shared a tiny bedroom. However, the house had a huge backyard with an above-ground pool and deck, surrounded by a big privacy fence. Being a curious kid, I liked to climb on the wooden boards of the fence to check out the neighbors. I recognized 2 boys from the house kitty corner to ours as they went to my school. It became a daily habit for me to climb up my side of the fence and chat with them. They had an uncle named Randy, probably in his mid-20s to 30s, who often worked in the backyard. Both my sister and I got to know him and would chat with him from the fence most days. Looking back, there were some red flags about him. One day, my sister mentioned to him that our mom worked the night shift, leaving just the 2 of us alone at night. This information seemed to be all Randy needed to hear. Shortly after that, something unsettling happened. One night, I woke up to the sound of my sister crying. We shared a bunk bed, and she was out of bed leaning against the wall, talking on the phone and crying. When I asked her what was wrong, she reassured me everything was fine, and I went back to sleep. It wasn't until the next day that I learned what had occurred. In the middle of the night while our mom was at work, Randy had jumped the fence and tried to break in. He banged on our bedroom window, demanding entry, but my sister refused. Undeterred, he walked around the entire house, banging on windows and yelling for her to let him in. That's when she called 911. By the time the police arrived, Randy had jumped back over the fence, and he denied any wrongdoing. The police claimed they couldn't do anything. Shaken by the incident, my mom couldn't change her work schedule. As a result, we started staying at our dad's house at night. Several years passed without any incidents, and we assumed everything was fine. I had long stopped talking to the boys next door. Then, it happened again. My sister, a couple of years older now, had friends over for a sleepover. They were sitting near a sliding glass door with vertical blinds, one of which was broken, creating a gap. Suddenly, one of my sister's friends turned rigid and said there was a guy standing at the sliding glass door. They all turned around, and it was Randy again, pressing his face against the glass where the blind was missing. Naturally, everyone freaked out, and 911 was called. Just like the previous time, he jumped the fence before the police arrived. Despite describing what he was wearing, the police couldn't prove anything. This was the last straw, prompting us to move out and obtain a restraining order against Randy. He didn't show up in court, so the judge granted us the order. We never saw him again. The last I checked, I found online that he is currently in prison for various charges.